Hi! We are here today at the European Youth Center of Strasbourg to go and interview Rui Gomes, who participated in the creation of Youth Express Network in 1993. Hi Rui! Thank you for having accepted this video interview. So my first question for you was, what motivated you to be part of the creation of this network?
I was at the time working at the European Youth Center here in Strasbourg as educational advisor, as a tutor. We were called at the time, and I was part of a long-term training course for youth workers, the second edition, I think. And we had several participants precisely working on young people who were disadvantaged or with less opportunities, which were terms very used at the time. And after the course, they wanted to do something together, especially because the center at the time had the reputation of being mostly for young people or youth leaders who were, so to say, either in the mainstream or middle class or pretty well off. And there was quite some criticism from youth workers that we were a bit elitist. And so when the training course occurred, and then we decided and succeeded in organizing a first study session with youth workers, we had in our minds, I think, the desire to take that a bit further, and not to stay at the level of one activity, but to actually formalize somehow the cooperation and the network that was initiated, so that other youth workers could join in, and that we could keep a relationship between that project and the Council of Europe. So it was very much about making sure that young people with lesser opportunities would have access to our programs, and to make sure that youth work as such, youth work especially, which fell outside the realm of youth organizations, would also take part in the Council of Europe's Youth Center and youth work. So that was very much at the origin of this motivation. Young people with lesser opportunities or disadvantaged, and youth workers working with these young people, to give them a voice, a representation in our system, in the Council of Europe. And that's also the expression of Youth Express Network comes a lot from there.
You are now working at the youth department of the Council of Europe, and you actually participate to our activity from time to time to present the Council of Europe and its work. So I would like to ask you, how has social inclusion evolved from your point of view since the creation of YEN?
I think the social inclusion has evolved, especially in relation to young people, due to a greater awareness that social inclusion is very important for all young people, especially young people with less opportunities. That this is a principal mission of youth policy and of youth work. I think it's recognized largely, both within the Council of Europe, in the European Union, but also in many of our member states, and also by youth and social organizations. This does not mean, in my opinion, that the issues of social inclusion are resolved, but the awareness that it is an important issue of youth policy and of social policy in general is greater than before. We also still have, nonetheless, different groups of young people on the margins or the fringes, which are systematically more or less left out. In fact, the young people that are not really picked up by youth work or by youth policy provisions. So there remains a mission, a very important mission there. We have also observed, and for example, the adoption of two important Council of Europe recommendations, the one on Enter, about young people from disadvantaged neighborhoods, and the one on access of young people to social rights. And these are just two examples of how this awareness is growing, has grown. And little by little, I believe that member states, especially institutions responsible for youth work or youth policy, are aware that this should be a major concern. I don't think that they always know how to do it, or they don't always have the resources to do everything that should be done, but I think the awareness is there. And organizations such as the Youth Express Network have also contributed greatly to this. In other words, that youth policy is not only for those that are in, but youth policy should be mostly to bring those that are out in.
So you partially already answered to this question, but in your opinion, what changes is Yen making nowadays?
Yen is a credible voice for young people who are in processes of social inclusion, and a very important voice for youth workers and institutions working with these young people. That is a question of credibility. It's a question of experience or expertise of working directly with these young people. And this voice and this expertise is very important, of course, for those young people, of course, for those youth workers, but also more generally also for the policy or for the institutions, also to be able to take them into account if they want to. That we can no longer pretend that we don't know with whom to contact. I mean, they are there. At the same time, the desire of making a network is also the importance of associating these sometimes local or national, sometimes very localized projects and youth workers to a European project. And that's extremely important, I believe, as a message for Europe today. That is that it's not enough just to occasionally associate project A, B, or C to a wider European project, but this, the démarche, the process of involving people in European issues, in taking part in Europe, must be also a medium long-term one. In other words, taking everyone seriously as actors, stakeholders at European level, regardless of where they come from, the very local or national level, or regardless of their capacity or their outreach. All of them have something to say and something meaningful to bring in to the debate. I think that's a very important difference, and I think several other projects have tried to emulate or to, I'm not saying imitate, but replicate the experience of the Youth Express Network. Some of them with success, and I think that's really been very good for the case of youth work in Europe.
Okay, thank you. Maybe we can finish with your wishes for Youth Express Network in this anniversary.
I think my wishes altogether in this anniversary is that the Youth Express Network will continue to grow, will continue to exist, will continue to function in its own way, with its own philosophy, with its own grassroots approach, yet always turned to Europe and not stay within themselves, to see also the Europe and the exchange, the possibility of being in a network as an advantage, as an added value. And there's also a community where we can exchange, where we can, I think, also like working together, and where you can get support, motivation, and sometimes inspiration, and sometimes friendship, and sometimes love.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
You are very much welcome. Happy birthday.